Hello everybody, welcome back, and today we are resuming the histories of the great houses of Westeros. And today we're talking about House Arryn of the Eyrie. We're going to talk about where they came from, how they came to be, and how they wound up as the most dominant house in the Vale. The Arryns claim their descent from the Andals. You'll hear this name a lot, like the Andals, the First Men, the Rhoynar. They are different civilizations. The Andals, they began across the Narrow Sea in a place called Andalos, and this is also where the Faith of the Seven has its own origins. The Andals come to Westeros, they invade, and the first place that they land happens to be the Vale. They start from there and they spread out across the realm, and to a lot of people it's seen as like a badge of honour to be able to claim your ancestry all the way back to the Andals. It's kind of like bragging rights in Westerosi society because the Andals and the Faith of the Seven are so intertwined. They are like the beacons, like that's what you got to aspire to. And if you can be like, well, we come from those people, it's a brag. Before the arrival of the Andals, the Vale was controlled by various families. Everyone was fighting to be the one in charge. King Rhaegar II of House Royce, he was known as one of the Bronze Kings. But when the Andals arrive in the Vale and they start trying to take over, the First Men who had arrived before, and they kicked out and displaced the children of the forest and the giants and the greenseers and everyone like that, now the Andals were doing the same thing to them. So the two groups were fighting. The First Men, they support King Rhaegar of House Royce, but the Andals, they support Sir Artis of House Arryn. He was known as the Falcon Knight. And there's a huge battle between these two sides called the Battle of the Seven Stars. Sir Artis Arryn, he wins the day and he becomes the first king of the mountains and the Vale. This was long before the Targaryens came and conquered Westeros. So House Arryn were now in charge. They were the #1 house in the Vale. The First Men who had been defeated, who picked the wrong side, they scuttle off into the mountains, and they are what we refer to now as the mountain clans, who are always in conflict with House Arryn. There is no love lost there. The Arryns reside at the Gates of the Moon, which is this fortress at the bottom of the Mountains of the Moon. Over time, they built another castle high up in the mountains that is called the Eyrie. Basically, they go between these two castles depending on the weather. When it gets really cold in the winters, that's when they come down from the Eyrie because it's easier to get food and resources at the Gates of the Moon. Getting up to the top of the Eyrie in bad weather, it's not an easy feat. Just ask Catelyn Stark, because when I read her journey up to the Eyrie and having to ride a mule, I really wish we could have seen that on the show because it was very visceral. It was like, this is not an easy fortress to get to. Now, House Arryn, yeah, they were in charge of the Vale, but they had some enemies. You had the Starks, who were the kings in the north, very close. There was a war that broke out between the Starks and the Arryns. It was called the Worthless War. Its other name is the War Across the Waters. The Starks invaded these neutral islands called the Three Sisters. And the people who lived there were like, House Arryn, hi, can you come and give us a hand here? Now the Starks, they did not like that. But they were ran off the islands, and going forward, these islands called the Three Sisters, they pledged their allegiance to House Arryn as a thank you for coming to their rescue. Then, not much really happens with the Arryns. Nothing's going on. At least no one's writing it down. Nothing really happens, and it doesn't really get juicy until Aegon's conquest happens. This is 300 years before the time of Game of Thrones. So at this time, the Vale was ruled by a very young king. He was only a child, King Ronald of House Arryn. His official title was King of the Mountains and the Vale. But he was just a child, so his regent was his mother, Shaera Arryn. Shaera tried to make a deal with Aegon Targaryen, the future conqueror, saying, I'll marry you and you can make my son your heir. How about that? We got a deal? Shockingly, Aegon said no thank you. He was like, look, I've had this before where people are offering me their wives. I've got 2 of my own, that's more than enough. So all he wanted was the Vale to just bend the knee. Don't be difficult. But the Vale and House Arryn, they are a proud people. They weren't going to just hand it over. Aegon the Conqueror sent his very close friend, Lord Daemon Velaryon, to the Vale, and there was a huge battle off the coast of Gulltown. The goal was to get the Vale to submit, and Visenya Targaryen flew along on her dragon Vhagar. And then there was a huge battle in the waters off the coast of Gulltown. You had the Arryn fleet going head to head with the Velaryon fleet, and it was looking pretty dicey. Daemon Velaryon actually died in this battle. It was like, oh, they might lose. Like, the Vale might prevail. And not for the first time, the Arryns forget about Visenya Targaryen and Vhagar. So she flies into this battle after Daemon Velaryon has fell, and she burns the Arryn fleet. And the Velaryon fleet and the Targaryen supporters, they're able to live to tell the tale, survive to another day. They don't try and press on and conquer the Vale right then. They're like, okay, let's circle back. Let's just cut our losses here. Let's get out of this battle in one piece, and we'll come back and we'll revisit. We'll try again. So the Targaryens then, they focus their efforts elsewhere because there was a conquest happening. And Shara Arryn is sat there in the Eyrie, and she thinks, first of all, that the Eyrie is like impregnable. Like, I'm safe here, I'm fine. But she is also learning about what is happening throughout the realm and these kingdoms that are falling to the dragons. She is seeing firsthand what happens when you say no to Aegon, Visenya and Rhaenys, and Balerion, Meraxes and Vhagar. It doesn't work out well. Aside from Dawn, which remained independent for another 150, 160 years, all the other kingdoms in Westeros were falling or having to submit to Aegon the Conqueror, and it wound up with the Vale being the last kingdom standing. The Vale had been lucky. They had escaped most of the fighting during the conquest. They thought, maybe we're going to be all right. And the Arryns in particular thought being up at the Eyrie would keep them safe. Didn't happen that way. They forgot about Visenya. They forgot about the dragons. Shara Arryn, she is up at the Eyrie. She walks out into the courtyard thinking it's just like any other day. She was not expecting to come face to face with Visenya Targaryen, with Ronald Arryn, Shara's young son, on Visenya's knee. And Vhagar is like right behind them, just napping, having a rest from the flight. The implication, it was crystal clear. Ronald was sat on Visenya's knee, and she didn't even have to say anything. No words needed to be spoken. It was crystal clear. The Vale needs to submit, because otherwise I'm calling on this dragon, and you don't want that. So Ronald Arryn, he goes from being the king of the mountains and the Vale to the next instant being just Lord of the Vale, Lord of the Eyrie, Warden of the East. To soften the blow, like a little bit, Visenya did take Ronald Arryn on like a little joyride. He hopped on Vhagar and she flew him around the Eyrie, around the Giant's Lance. Like, little treat. Sorry you're not king anymore, but you know, hope this makes up for it. And from then on, Ronald Arryn was known as the king who flew. And Ronald Arryn, he ruled over the Vale for like over 30 years. Then things get a bit messy. After the death of Aegon the Conqueror, things start shifting in the Vale. Aenys is the new king, and he's not exactly intimidating, put it that way. He's looked at as a bit of a soft touch. It's around this time that Ronald Arryn himself is usurped by his younger brother, Jonos Arryn. And Jonos doesn't just take the Eyrie and say, I'm the new lord of the Eyrie, I'm now in charge of the Vale. He says, I'm the new king. King of the Mountains and the Vale, the old title of the Arryn kings before they had to bend the knee. And Jonos threw Ronald Arryn out of the moon door. Yeah, he was the king who flew in more ways than one. However, Jonos Arryn did not get away with this, because guess who turned up? Another dragon rider. They never learn. They never learn up the Eyrie. Maegor Targaryen, brother to King Aenys, he rocks up on the back of a dragon that he's just started to ride. And it's none other than his father's old dragon, Balerion the Black Dread. Now, if you thought Visenya on Vhagar was scary, Maegor on Balerion is even worse. Like, I would be like, can I leave? I don't want to be here. Like, it's gonna kick off. But Jonos Arryn, he himself is then thrown out of the moon door. But Maegor is like, yeah, we're not done here. I'm not going to leave his supporters behind to just, rally again under somebody else. No. Maegor was brutal in his retaliation, in the punishment for not only the usurpation of his brother, but the fact that this was House Arryn trying to secede the Vale from the Seven Kingdoms. With the two Arryn brothers now dead, like both thrown out the moon door, there is a new lord put in, another member of House Arryn, but like a lesser known member called Hubert Arryn. Hubert had 6 sons, so the thought was, this will sort out the succession. He's got 6 sons, one of them will succeed him. If not that, there's 5 spare. The belief is that House Arryn carried on through one of Hubert's 6 sons, but as with A Song of Ice and Fire, as with every house, we have a gap in the histories where we don't know the name of the person in charge of that house. We have a guy called Ryman Arryn who might be one of those 6 sons, but it's not confirmed. Ryman had a son called Rodrik Arryn. He became Lord of the Eyrie and the head of House Arryn when he was just a boy, because his father and his uncles had been killed by some of the mountain clans. They hate the Arryns and they're always like looking for a fight. Yeah. They took out some more Arryns. So that is how Rodrik Arryn became Lord of the Eyrie. Rodrik marries and he has a couple of children, he has some sons, but then his wife dies. This is when the very middle-aged Rodrik Arryn is married to the much younger Princess Daela Targaryen. Rodrik had a sister who had served in the court of Queen Alysanne, was one of her companions, and Daela is Alysanne's daughter, so you can see the connection between the Arryns and the Targaryens. Rodrik was one of the men suggested to Daela, and she was allowed to pick which one she wanted to marry. And I think it was like, well, out of all of these, Rodrik seems the nicest, like a kinder older man who will treat me well. Rodrik and Daela, they get married and they go off to live at the Eyrie. And very quickly, Daela finds herself pregnant, but she was very young at this time. And basically her body was not mature enough to handle the process that you go through to carry a child. She does carry a daughter and gives birth to her, but she dies in childbirth. But the child does survive, a daughter that is named Aemma Arryn. Aemma Arryn is then married to her cousin, her first cousin, Prince Viserys Targaryen. Thankfully, they wait a while before they consummate this marriage. I think the death of Emma's mother, Daela, in childbirth, her very first child, like, she was so scared as well. Like, I think Aemma was petrified too. So the whole thought is, let's give it a bit of time until she's old enough so that her body will survive what she goes through. Aemma and Viserys, I personally like to think that, you know, they had a genuine love for each other. I mean, we don't really know, but I'd like to think that they were happy in their marriage. And Aemma was by Viserys' side when he was chosen as the new heir to the Iron Throne at the Great Council of 101. So she knew an Arryn was going to be queen. An Arryn would sit on the Iron Throne, and any children she has will be half Targaryen, half Arryn. Well, 3/4 Targaryen, 1/4 Arryn, technically, but Arryn blood would flow through to the Iron Throne. And that's kind of a big deal. Now, while Aemma Arryn is living in King's Landing with her new husband, Viserys, back in the Vale, there is a new person in charge of the Eyrie, and this is Lady Jane Arryn. It's believed, or at least rumoured, that she is Rodrik's granddaughter, because there's a little bit of a gap. Jane's father and uncles are killed by these mountain clans. And Lady Jane, she becomes Lady of the Eyrie, she's like 3 or 4 years old. She's a child, and she's got to fight to keep a hold of that title. She's got to fight to keep a hold of her inheritance because there's plenty of men who want to take it from her. Now, back over in King's Landing, Aemma Arryn, she gives birth to a daughter named Rhaenyra, and she is the apple of her parents' eye. They adore this child, and she is literally the realm's delight and her parents' delight. Aemma has a lot of pregnancies, but Rhaenyra is the only child to actually survive and to grow up. Emma herself dies in childbirth. Viserys remarries to Alicent Hightower, has more kids with Alicent, but he names Rhaenyra as his heir and sticks with it. When Viserys dies and Rhaenyra is like, okay, let me go and claim my crown, but is being challenged by her younger brother Aegon, she looks to the Eyrie, to House Arryn, to her family and says, can I count on you? Will you back me? Because I'm going to have to fight for my crown. And Lady Jane Arryn, she understands probably more than anybody alive what it feels like to be Rhaenyra. She's been through the exact same thing, just on a slightly smaller scale. Somebody is coming for your title, your inheritance, what you believe is yours. And not only are you family, but you gave your word. House Arryn were just one of the many houses up and down the realm who swore to Viserys that they would honour his choice. Lady Jane Arryn says to Jace, tell your mother we're here, we've got her back. Not only is she my blood, but I know exactly how it feels, and I'm not going to stand by and watch another woman treated like this. I'm not going to watch another woman have what is hers taken from her. We will fight. You can count on us. In fact, let me just say the exact quote. She says, Rhaenyra remains our rightful queen and mine own blood besides, and Arryn on her mother's side. So the Arryns, they were going to side with the Blacks during the Dance of the Dragons. But Jane Arryn says, look, I'm more than happy to support you, but I need a little something in return. Preferably a dragon. We need some help. We need some protection. Finally, an Arryn who is aware of the threat of dragons. Jane Arryn read her history books. She knew we've got to be careful because a dragon could fly into the Eyrie. One of the Green's dragons could fly and take us all out. So an agreement is struck and Prince Joffrey and Rhaena Targaryen, Daemon and Laena's daughter, they go to the Vale and Jane Arryn hosts them and they have dragon eggs. Joffrey's got a little dragon, only small. Now, Jane Arryn survives the Dance of the Dragons and she actually goes on to be one of the regents for the new king, Aegon III. Jane's own rule over the Vale, that was challenged time and time again by one of her cousins, a Sir Arnold Arryn. Jane did not have any children of her own, and she named as her own successor to the Eyrie as, leader of the Vale and warden of the East. She names one of her more distant cousins, a chap called Joffrey Arryn. And Arnold, he did not like that because he thought that he was more closely related. He's like, it should have been me, not this other random guy. Like, where'd you find him? Now, Arnold Arryn actually winds up going crazy and losing his mind because he'd been locked in the sky cells for so long. But he had a son, and that son challenges Joffrey Arryn and says, I'll fight you for the Vale, but that doesn't happen. And so the new Lord of the Eyrie is now Lord Joffrey Arryn. Then we have another gap in the timeline around 50 years or so where we don't know the names of the leaders of House Arryn or what was going down. We pick up with House Arryn and the Vale with this new lord that is called Lord Donal Arryn. His name pops up when he backs House Targaryen, he backs the crown during the Blackfyre rebellions. Because House Arryn stayed loyal to the crown, they are rewarded for that loyalty. Daeron II permits the marriage of his third son, Prince Rhaegal, to one Lady Alice Arryn. So once again, we see a marriage between the Arryns and the Targaryens. That alliance is going strong. It can't have been an easy marriage because the word is that Rhaegal was a bit of a wild card. He was kind of out of his mind half the time. Supposedly he was just walking around naked. He was causing a scene. It was a whole thing. It can't have been easy for Alice Arryn, but they wind up having 3 children together who are part Arryn, part Targaryen. You have the twins, Aelor and Aelora, and then you have another daughter, Daenora Targaryen. Back in the Vale, it's believed around this time the current Lord of the Eyrie is one Lord Jasper Arryn. We don't know much about Jasper Arryn, except he had 3 children, including a son named Jon Arryn. Jasper also had a daughter, Jon Arryn's sister, Alice Arryn, another Alice Arryn. She married into House Waynwood. And of the children she has, one of her daughters marries into House Harding. And a son was born called Harold Harding. Funnily enough, this Harold Harding is not some bit part character. He's actually integral to a plot that Littlefinger has going on. He intends to marry Harold Harding to Sansa Stark. The plan is to say that Robert Arryn, Jon Arryn's sickly little son, is not actually the best person to lead the Vale. It should be Harold, because he has a legitimate claim stemming back from his grandmother, Alice Arryn. So that would make Jon Arryn Harold's great uncle. But that's like further down the line. Back in the time of Jasper Arryn, he then dies, and it is his eldest son Jon who becomes Jon Arryn, Lord of the Vale. Jon Arryn married twice. Firstly, it was into House Royce, and then he married like a distant Arryn cousin. But sadly, no children from these marriages actually survived. Jon Arryn kept close ties with House Targaryen. In fact, he fought for King Jaehaerys II of House Targaryen during the War of the Ninepenny Kings. People liked Jon Arryn. He was fairly popular, and he was making friends with the other lords at the time throughout Westeros. And it led to Jon Arryn basically taking in two sons of different lords. He took in Robert Baratheon, son of Lord Steffon Baratheon of Storm's End, and he takes in Ned Stark, son of Rickard Stark, Lord of Winterfell. Jon Arryn is basically like a surrogate father, a foster father. He really does have a strong bond with Ned and Robert. And it's even more poignant given that he does not have any surviving biological children of his own. So he sees Ned and Robert as good as his own sons. And that is important because it means that if anything happens to them, Jon Arryn, he will not allow that to happen. Jon Arryn will step in. And he does. Now, in the event of his death, Jon Arryn's heir was going to be his nephew, Elbert Arryn. Now we're getting around the time of Robert's rebellion, and low-key, the truth of the matter is, it's actually Jon Arryn that calls the banners, and that is how the war breaks out. But he didn't do it on a whim. He did it for a very good reason, because Aerys Targaryen, the Mad King, he'd already kind of lost the plot, and he was irrational and paranoid and making terrible decisions left, right and centre. He demands the heads of Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon. He basically sees them as troublemakers because this whole thing has blown up where Ned's sister Lyanna and Robert's betrothed has vanished, and so has the Mad King's son, Rhaegar. You know, they're off together. This whole thing is about to explode, and Aerys, he really goes too far because he didn't need to demand the heads of Ned and Robert. It wasn't necessary, but he does just that. And Jon Arryn, oh, he does not like that. You know when I said that Jon Arryn would take up for Ned and Robert? This is exactly what he does. He calls the banners and is like, let's go to war. I'm not having this. Like, we're not tolerating Aerys the Mad King for a day longer, because Aerys had threatened Ned and Robert, and at that time Jon Arryn had no children of his own, so that they were his kids, and he was going to fight to protect them. Now, Jon's heir, Elbert Arryn, he winds up going to King's Landing. He's part of this group that go trying to get answers of what's going on. He is killed in King's Landing. He does not make it back to the Vale. Jon Arryn was one of the leaders of the rebellion. He fought. He was there at the Battle of the Trident when Rhaegar Targaryen fell to Robert Baratheon, and the gig was up. Like, the writing was on the wall then. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before they crept closer to King's Landing, took the Red Keep, got rid of Aerys, and Robert Baratheon had the better claim on paper because he himself is part Targaryen thanks to his grandmother, Rhaelle Targaryen. So he had the best claim. So he was the one that was going to spearhead the rebellion, and he did, and he was made the next king. But Jon Arryn was by his side throughout all of this, offering wise counsel. And Robert Baratheon named Jon Arryn as his Hand of the King, which was a brilliant decision. Jon Arryn helped calm things down. He helped make Robert a more rational ruler. He helped take the temperature down in Westeros after this huge rebellion that had shaken everybody. Jon Arryn has a new job as Hand of the King, so he now moves to King's Landing, and he brings with him wife number 3. During the war, I don't know why I sound like Uncle Albert there, but during the war, Jon Arryn married Lysa Tully in a joint ceremony with Catelyn Tully and Ned Stark. So Lysa comes to the capital with Jon, and they set up home in the Tower of the Hand and That is their new life. Eventually, Lysa gives birth to a son who they name Robert. He is called Robin on Game of Thrones, but in the books his name is Robert Arryn. Lord Royce of Runestone, he's keeping things ticking over in the Vale while Jon Arryn is serving as Hand of the King in the capital. And Jon Arryn, he was well liked and pretty universally respected. But his downfall came when he discovered the truth about the parentage of Joffrey, Marcella and Tommen Baratheon, that they were really the children of Cersei Lannister, yes, but their father was not the king, was not Cersei's husband Robert. No, it was Uncle Jaime Lannister. This is when Littlefinger seizes the opportunity, because he had come to King's Landing after Lysa had convinced Jon Arryn, bring him along, give him his start, let him work and prove himself. And Littlefinger does that. This is where his life in the politics of King's Landing begins, and he works his way up the ladder. All the while, Lysa Arryn is married to Jon. It's kind of a marriage of convenience. She's obsessed with Littlefinger. That is who she really wants to be with. And so if Littlefinger tells her to do something, Lysa will do it. This is when Littlefinger initiates a plan, and he gets Lysa to poison her husband, Jon Arryn, and they pin it on the Lannisters. They want to sow confusion, chaos. They want everyone fighting with each other. Lysa takes her young son, Robert Arryn, and they go off to the Eyrie, thinking, okay, there's no dragons around anymore. We'll be safe there. Nothing was going to come between Lysa and her son, because word got back to Lysa that Tywin Lannister was thinking, oh, why don't we send this boy to Dragonstone? Stannis can help raise him. Stannis, he's tough. He'll teach this kid a thing or two. But Lysa says no way. So she takes her son and they barricade themselves in at the Eyrie. So now, with the death of Jon Arryn, the Vale is under the control of young Robert Arryn. But Lysa is the one really in charge. But sadly, Lysa Arryn, she never realises that she is being used by Littlefinger and that he didn't love her. He was always obsessed with her sister. It was always Catelyn. And it all comes to a head. And she realises in her final moments, I've been had. I've been duped. When Littlefinger throws her out the moon door. Because by this point, Littlefinger has arrived in the Vale with Sansa Stark in disguise. He no longer needs Lysa Arryn. Littlefinger has come from nothing, and now he is the one with access to Robert Arryn. He is the one who can manipulate him to get him to do what he wants. But this child is young, is not in good health, is known to be pretty sickly. People don't really expect him to live to adulthood. And Littlefinger, he is banking on exactly that happening, that Robert Arryn will just succumb to some kind of ailment or disease or something, because Littlefinger has a plan and it concerns the future of the Vale. Do you remember I mentioned Harold Harding, the one whose grandmother was an Arryn, who'd married into the Wayne Woods and everything? Well, he is currently part of Littlefinger's plan because he wants to marry Sansa to Harold Harding and to bring them out together and say, forget Robert Arryn, even if he is still alive, he won't live long. The future of the Vale, it belongs in the hands of Harold Harding, and he can trace his lineage back to House Arryn. He has Arryn blood in him, so he has a legitimate claim. And if they unveil Harold right next to Sansa Stark, then that's just winner, winner, chicken dinner. That's where House Arryn stands today. Robert Arryn, he's still alive, he's clinging on. He might still prevail. I don't know whether Sansa really will marry Harold Harding, or whether there is more to happen, or whether Sansa leaves the Vale. It all depends on whether Littlefinger can pull off this plan. But Littlefinger, he's kind of persona non grata. The other lords of the Vale, they don't like him, but they are forced to tolerate him because Littlefinger has gotten himself into the good books of Robert Arryn. He's like Uncle Peter. He has no idea that Littlefinger is scheming against him. To wrap up this video, I want to say that House Arryn, they are still hanging on. They're not giving in just yet. They want to remain as the top house in the Vale. They want to rule from the Eyrie. They don't want someone else coming in and taking it from them, and for the Arryns to be a name just lost to history, because they've already had a big step down. They used to be kings, and now they're just lords, which is better than nothing. But now the concern is, will the Arryns be able to hold on to the Eyrie, or Will Harold Harding become the new Lord of the Eyrie, and will the Arryns fade into history? We don't know. We shall see if we ever get the remaining books in the Song of Ice and Fire series. If you have stayed to the very end, I thank you ever so much. It is massively appreciated, and I hope you enjoy these videos, and I hope I can continue to bring them to you and we can learn about maybe some more obscure houses. If there's any house that you would like me to talk about, just leave me a comment and I will do my best to get to it, because there's a lot of houses, great and small, that have very, very juicy stories in A Song of Ice and Fire.